Welcome to Buzzed and Baffled. I'm Nicole,
I'm Kyla.
and in this podcast, we're going to share interesting and amazing stories. Kyla is going to tell me a story, and I'm going to blind react.
We're also going to drink wine while we do this, hence the buzzed part of Buzzed and Baffled.
So, you're going to get my blind reaction. It's going to be completely unfiltered.
Just as God intended.
Remember, you asked for this. You subscribed.
Okay, and as a disclaimer, both Nicole and I hold professional licenses, but nothing we discuss or say in this podcast is intended to be professional advice. Please seek real professional advice if you feel you are in need.
Not from us.
Yeah, not from us. Also, the opinions that we share in this podcast are strictly our own. They're not reflective of any of our employers or any third parties, so don't sue us.
You won't get much from us, so it's really not worth it.
I'm just going to do that.
Yep.
Okay, you ready? Am I recording?
We are recording.
Okay.
So welcome to episode 4.
Yeah, episode 4 already, hard to believe.
We're going to mix it up tonight, and I have a baffling story, which I have labeled, "A will is simply a dead giveaway."
Oh my gosh, you're so clever and funny.
So we're going to have Kyla introducing tonight's wine.
Yeah, tonight's wine is one of my favorite wines. It's the Francis Coppola Diamond Collection Black Label Claret. This is one of, I think, the best red wines that you can buy. Just to read a little bit about it.
And if you get it on sale, it's like $14, guys. It's very much worth it.
Yeah,
it's very good.
Even not on sale, like it's worth the $19 or $20 for the bottle.
Yeah.
So it's the Coppola Winery signature offering. It's made in the same style as the Bordeaux, but you can't call it Bordeaux because they have laws against calling things.
It's not made in Bordeaux, France.
It's made in California, but it's really good. It's a red blend Bordeaux style wine, and the bottle is really cool. It has like gold netting around it to make you feel extra fancy.
Well, I mean, you have to cut the wine bottle out, so like you have to work for it, so you know it's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just a really good one, so highly recommended.
Yeah, like one of my dreams is to go to California, to go to Napa, and to go to the Coppola Winery because I think it would be amazing.
And Nicole's actually being a liar because she's not drinking this right now.
I am, because I am allowed to do 1 glass of red wine a night because I'm a puss. So I am going to drink the Sauvignon Blanc with the pepper in it because Tiki Talks got me and I tried it and they're not wrong.
Yeah, we tried it last night. It's super good.
But as soon as this glass is done, I am going to throw this pepper on her floor so her dog can eat it. And then I'm going to drink the Coppola Claret. She just gave me a real look like, bitch, you're not.
Don't go wrong, please.
Okay. So, I have a couple of things to say before, because we're doing a deep dive on a crime that had happened. So, it's important to know, I'm not a lawyer. I may say things that are incorrect. I'm also not a crime reporter. I do not have fact checkers. So please know that perhaps I might get things wrong, but I did my best.
Do you have spell checkers?
I do not have spell checkers. We know I don't have look at the website. I don't have spell checkers.
It's also important for me to add, I don't know what Nicole's about to tell me. She's given me very limited information. All I know is it's something kind of funeral adjacent.
Mm-hmm. I got it because she is a funeral director.
Yeah, I have I'm licensed in the state of Michigan as a funeral director. So any of my input for this is not...
If I disappear, look at Kyla.
Don't, because I didn't do it. But anything that, any of my opinions as far as this is not intended to be reflective of my license or any privileges bestowed on me by the state of Michigan or my mortuary science degree. This is just for funsies.
And so I'm going to go in saying, I think you know the first 1/4 of the story. In fact, I know you do. But as I deep dived into this, it got worse and worse and worse as I went along. Yeah. So, guys, this is going to be a 2-parter. So you're only going to get half of the story tonight.
Yeah, she's got a stack of papers. There's a whiteboard.
There's a whiteboard. So I don't think we've told people. There's a website now If you go to buzzedandbaffled.net, there is a website. And I'm going to put some of the information so you can look at it for yourself from this because it took me 2 weeks to put this together. And if I have to read it, you should be able to also.
All right, well, let's jump in.
So, A Will is Simply a Dead Giveaway is the story of Bernie Tiede and Marjorie Nugent.
Okay.
So, this takes place in the 1990s in Carthage, Texas. Bernie himself, he was born in 1958 in Tyler, Texas. He had a normal childhood. He went about his day. But in 1990, he is a funeral director, and Marjorie's husband dies.
Okay.
He is the person who embalms her husband and then befriends Marjorie. So,
I'm following.
yeah. The thing is, like, a lot of people might know this story from the movie Bernie, which I know you've watched.
Yeah, with Jack Black.
Yep. And, what's her name? I forget. The one who played Marjorie. She did it really well.
Oh, I can't remember. I saw it so long ago.
It'll be later in the story. But the thing is, when it was found out that he killed Marjorie, no one in the town wanted to believe it happened. Because everyone hated Marjorie and everyone loved Bernie.
Well, if there's anyone beloved in the town, it's a funeral director, so...
So, when you think about this, you've seen the movie. Just knowing on what you saw, what do you think his motives for killing Marjorie may have been?
From what I can remember, she was fairly wealthy.
Mm-hmm. So her husband was a tycoon, an oil tycoon.
Yeah, she had access to a lot of assets.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember if they had kids or not.
They definitely did not.
Okay, so really, there's no one left.
Well, like Marjorie had kids.
Okay.
But she and Bernie definitely.
No, I know her. She and Bernie didn't have kids. But money is what I'm going to say.
So the thing is, so I'm going to start by maybe starting with talking about Marjorie, because she's the character you need to kind of understand about the motive of why someone would do what happened. So Marjorie was married to Hal Nugent, and he was the one with the money. He was the oil tycoon. But if you ask the people in the town about Marjorie, they described her as, I quote, a crotchety cheapskate.
That tracks. I mean, her name's Marjorie, so...
Yeah. When Hal died in 1990, Bernie worked at the funeral and befriended Marjorie. They became fast friends, and in 1991, Marjorie amended her will, leaving him $10 million from her estate.
Nobody amended their will for me.
She cut her son out of the will when she did this. In 1993, Bernie quit his job at the funeral home. So all this time he's been a funeral director. But in 1993, 2 years later, he quit his job and became her business manager and was her travel partner. For several years, they took cruises and exotic trips all over the world. Prior to her death, Marjorie gave him power of attorney over her funds. She was allowed to pay his bills. She encouraged him to spend money for himself. But her son Rob, who she's estranged from, claims that Bernie alienated her from her friends and family.
Oh, so he's saying, like, oh, my mother was this...
My mother,
person and,
she's a sweet, innocent old lady.
And Bernie isolated
big,
her.
bad Bernie came in. So they're going about their days. He's with her 24/7. But out of the blue, in November of 1993, Bernie shot Marjorie in the back 4 times with a .22 caliber pistol.
Huh. Okay.
He concealed the crime from the police by preparing the body and stored it in a deep freezer. He wrapped it up in sheets. The news told me they were Eddie Bauer sheets, if it matters.
It's a very important detail.
But he put her among the frozen corn, pecan, and meat, and just like taped the freezer shut.
Did he embalm her or just put her in the freezer?
They only said prepare, so I don't think there was embalming. I think it was I shot her, I wrapped her up, and I stuck her in a deep freeze.
Especially since he quit his job at the funeral home, which I'm assuming he didn't own. He wouldn't have access
So
to
he was working there. He didn't have access to embalming things. It'd be weird if you just like drag a freezer into a funeral home. So he sealed the freezer shut with tape. Meanwhile, nobody knows she's dead yet. So he's continued to go about town like everything's fine. He has continued to use her funds, but he did it for philanthropic purposes.
Oh.
He would donate things to the community. He would buy people things they needed. So he wasn't just like pissing money away. He was doing things in the community that they're like, we love Bernie. Mm-hmm. We don't believe that he did this.
Yeah, and it's hard to turn away money regardless of the source of it.
So he killed her in November 1996. It wasn't until August 1997
oh, so we're like a year later almost.
That people were like, this is sketchy. Where's Marjorie? And interestingly enough, as I did the deep dive, it wasn't her family. It wasn't her children. It was her business associates when she didn't show up to sign annual paperwork that called the police. So like, this is weird. She's not showing up.
So they had to do like their annual corporate certification or whatever. And,
so it was actually a business associate who called the police and were like, this is sketch. Something's up. The police called the son. They went into the house and that's when they found her in the deep freezer. Ugh. So at that time, Bernie was 39. And he was charged with murder and at that time stealing approximately $200,000. The son, who she's estranged from, Ron, thought that it happened because Marjorie discovered the theft.
Oh, okay. So the son thinks Bernie did it to cover his own tracks.
Yeah.
But he did it for some other reason and then spent the money after she...
Okay, so I have to go to the board here, guys.
Coming up to the whiteboard here.
We have 1990. I don't know if they can still hear me because I have my headphones on.
Yep, I can hear you.
So, we're at 1996.
She's got a whole timeline on here. We'll post a picture.
I'm going to post a picture on the website.
We'll post pictures of all this. So.
Dead.
1996, dead. Okay.
So, this is where things start to go sideways. So you've watched the movie. I have not. Is this pretty much in line with what the movie says?
And the movie was cast as a dark comedy. So, I mean, you have this thing going on. But it's a Jack Black movie, so it's not it's not a tearjerker. It's kind of a ridiculous, funny thing.
So, as a funeral director, like, how well does a body stay preserved in a freezer? And we're talking just like a box freezer. It's like a chest freezer.
I mean, really indefinitely, as long as the power doesn't go out. Once a body's frozen, there really isn't much, there's no decomposition because there's no bacteria that are able to survive. Normal bacteria found in a human body that would, a regular person might decompose if they die in bed. But just like when you have meat in the freezer, that's kind of a bad analogy. It's the same thing.
I mean, but it is meat, so.
Yeah, so, I mean, it kills, freezing kills most harmful bacteria, and it's really the harmful or the bacteria in your body that kind of does decomposition. So, really, forever.
So, like, everything I read, it took them 2 days to de-thaw her body.
That makes sense.
But I don't think the autopsy had anything surprising. She was shot 4 times in the back. That's what's killed her. Yeah. She's also like a 90-year-old woman. So when we're looking at the legal proceedings, in 1999, he's convicted of first-degree murder. There was enough evidence to prove premeditation on part of the crime, which is a requirement for first-degree murder, and this is important later in the story.
Okay. So they knew something that he had planned this ahead of time. He didn't just walk up and said...
It may be they knew something, or it may be something happened during the investigation that led them to have the ability to say premeditation.
Okay, yeah, so it wasn't like they found out that they were in a argument and he pulled out a gun and shot her. He had planned at least a portion of this.
Yes.
Okay.
So he received a life sentence for this conviction. And so, this happens in 1999. And in 2012, the movie you saw was made about this. Mm-hmm. And it's the movie that led to everything else that is very, very interesting about this case.
Okay, so this is where my knowledge of this case stops.
Yes.
Because after I watched the movie, I gave it no more thought in my life.
Yes. Because I thought that it was this until I just did a simple Google search and I started finding court documents and I dug in. I was like, holy shit. So, 1999. I gotta add this to the board. Hold on.
It's a whole thing where we have wired headphones. Our Bluetooth headphone experiment didn't work because we didn't...
First conviction.
Okay, first conviction, 1999. But we didn't take into consideration the lag with our Bluetooth headphones.
I also spelled conviction wrong, but that's neither here nor there. Also, I have a picture. So we have Bernie, the real Bernie. Where is he? So here's the real Bernie. 39 years old. And here's Marjorie. Whatever old she is.
Old.
She's a crypt keeper.
Yeah, she's old.
So we have Bernie and we have Marjorie.
Also, as someone who's going to be turning 39 in 6 days, I feel like I'm doing a little bit better than Bernie at age 39 over there.
Well, it was 1999, and 39 in 1999 is very different than 39 now. Also, you have the skincare I've been giving you, so, I'm keeping you young. She doesn't ask questions, she just puts it on her face. It's a Bathory situation, but we're not going to talk about that. So, what happens is, after the movie occurs, it's discovered that he was sexually abused as a child.
Okay.
And the psychiatrist who assessed him did not know that he was sexually abused, so he could not state whether or not that affected what he was doing in that moment.
Okay, so they couldn't determine if it was a mitigating factor or
Yeah,
not.
so did the trauma he experienced, because it's 1999, they were not really good at looking at trauma back then. Because can you think of another case where perhaps sexual abuse was involved?
I can, and I bet I know what it is because you asked me to.
I distinctly said, I was like, what is your opinion of the Menendez brothers?
So my opinion of the Menendez brothers, and I've watched several shows about the Menendez brothers, including the one on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
If the sexual abuse happened, and I'm not in a position to say whether it did or did not, I don't have, I really only have sensationalized media portrayals, then I don't want to say the parents deserved it, but I will say that is a mitigating factor in everything that occurred.
Well, because when we look at the Menendez case, it is very different in the sense where when we look at Bernie, the thought was later on he was in a dissociative state. Were the Menendez brothers or not, we don't know. That hasn't been something that's really been brought forward. And I mean, maybe someone has talked about it, but I have not heard, were the Menendez brothers disassociating when they murdered their parents?
Yeah, and that's not something I've heard either. And to me, as a non-mental health professional, two people dissociating at the same time is like a folie à deux situation.
Because when you're
it could happen, but did it? Because
the thing is, when you're disassociating, your normal sense of self isn't there. And this all comes into play much, much later.
Okay.
But So, after this movie comes out, a defense attorney takes interest in Bernie's case and learns that he had been sexually abused by an uncle. And they're like, wait a minute, like, how did this play a role in what was going on?
Mm-hmm.
Because, let's clue in, people, Marjorie may have not been the sweetest old woman that everyone thought she was.
Yeah. Okay, I see where you're going with this.
So this lawyer interviewing, or like looking into this, was like, he was in a dissociative state at the time of the crime due to the sexual abuse by his uncle as a child. And the verbal and physical abuse he had from Marjorie during their friendship played a direct role in her demise.
Yeah, okay, so he's saying the additional abuse that he suffered by her kind of triggered him back to when he was being sexually abused as a child by his uncle.
And the entire time, the son was like, well, no, he cut her off. But then a nephew wrote a New York Times article entitled, How My Aunt Ended Up in a Deep Freeze. And
That's bold, but I bet he has some really good things to say.
His name is Joe Rhodes. You can see more about this on the website. I have links to the New York Times article. But here are some of the highlights from this article. Joe describes Marjorie, depending on whom you ask, the meanest woman in East Texas. There was something about Aunt Marjorie ending up in a freezer that seemed appropriate. She'd always been cold-hearted. It was not an unfitting end. Remembering growing up with Marjorie, Joe recalls, Aunt Marjorie wasn't on speaking terms with anyone in her immediate family when she died. Not my mother, with whom she had an ugly falling out over the terms of grandfather's will. Not her own child, Rod Nugent Jr., a successful Amarillo pathologist she hadn't seen in years, or her grandchildren, who she sued over some trust money she wouldn't let them have.
Oh, boy.
When informed Marjorie died, the first thing my Aunt Sue, her other sister, said was, what a relief.
Oof.
Joe remembered speaking to Shirley MacLaine, that is the actress who played Marjorie in the movie, on the set of Bernie. She coaxed stories out of me I hadn't told in years. How Aunt Marjorie once threatened to put me in a mental institution because I wouldn't cut my hair. How she chased me around the yard with garden shears because I wouldn't clean out a wasp's nest with my bare hands. How, when I was 14, she locked me in her house for 2 days and wouldn't let me call home. Finally, when Aunt Marjorie went to the grocery store, a maid, sympathetic to my plight, unlocked the bedroom door so I could get to a phone and beg my mother to come rescue me.
That's also kidnapping.
Mm-hmm. She did, and that was the last time I went to Aunt Marjorie's house. But, he continues, there were even darker stories I didn't know until the last few years. Aunt Marge, who loved to sew and shop, didn't have a daughter of her own, tried to get custody of my sister Carrie by having our parents declared unfit.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
She claimed that my father was an alcoholic, which wasn't true. He barely drank. And she could provide a more suitable upbringing.
Aunt Marjorie's a nightmare.
Aunt Marjorie's a nightmare. It didn't work, but apparently she was serious enough to meet with attorneys. I always knew my mother and aunt weren't very close. Even so, my mother hosted her wake and only said kind things about her in public. It's only been in the recent months since the murder, the trial, and the making of the film that she's been willing to talk about their relationship. She hated your father, my mother told me. I think she hated everybody. I don't know why she was so ugly to so many people, but she was. And then my mother said something I've never heard her say before, something I think I wish I could have shared with Shirley MacLaine. I was scared of her.
Yeah, she's a monster.
My mother said that about her oldest sister. I think Meme, which is what they called the grandmother, their mother, was scared to death of her. Sometimes I think she was the devil on earth.
Huh.
So Joe, who was the nephew, went to the prison to see Bernie while he was still under his first conviction, which is an important note, his first conviction.
Okay. Yeah, I did note earlier that you said his first conviction, and you put it on the board.
Okay. So, when talking about his conviction, his conversation with Bernie, Joe recalls after the funeral, Bernie befriended Marjorie because it seemed like she didn't have any friends. He told me, I just felt this compelling desire, this need to give her some friendship. I don't know, maybe I thought I would rescue her.
Yeah.
Does this remind you of anything?
Well, I mean, I've had my share of difficult families, and there's definitely a lot of family dynamics. And as a funeral director, you're extra in tune to that because it can make your job very easy if everyone gets along, or incredibly difficult if there's things that you described where you have someone who is estranged from basically everybody by their own making. You know, if you have a family where one child is estranged, it's probably
the one child.
If you have a family where everyone is estranged from one person, it's that one person, and that person is Marjorie.
If nobody talks to you, you're the problem.
Yeah. And I can see where Bernie went into this, and his motive was not malicious. He saw a very lonely woman and just wanted to help her and give her friendship, not knowing the terrible human being she was.
But does it remind you anything about being in a domestically violent relationship?
Personally, no.
Well, no, but when you look at the context of it.
Oh, yeah, she's a total abuser.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of parallel to, you know, going back to the Menendez brothers, some of the things we heard about the father, true or not, again, my only source on this is, you know, sensationalized Netflix and People articles and things like that.
No one's ever going to know the truth.
But it's a lot of the same things where people were afraid of them.
Well, people were afraid of the Menendez brothers' father because he held power. And this is a mean old woman who had a lot of money in a very small town in Texas. Yep. So, he befriends Marjorie. He goes places with her. He took her shopping. He took her to dinner. Soon it seemed they were going everywhere together, often seen holding hands.
That's troublesome.
They started taking longer trips to Dallas, to New York. They went to Broadway shows. It seemed an odd pairing to the gossips in town. And in Texas, there were plenty.
That would be us. We're the gossips.
It's us. We're the gossips. Who began to speculate about the nature of their relationship. It was misguided, but there was gossip.
Yeah, and people want to talk about anything. You know, regardless of how terrible this woman was, you have this seemingly sweet man who just kind of wants to give her some support and friendship, and you know they hold hands. Did they have a sexual relationship?
But in the 1990 trial, the 1999 trial, this is what it was. They had a sexual relationship because the business associates testified that Marge took Bertie to lunch in Shreveport once and made him uncomfortable with the way they were physically familiar. So they went to a lunch with a business associate.
Okay. Yeah. So it's not hearsay. This is like a first-hand account.
So there may have been physically familiarity. And what the guy said is, I would say the greeting kiss and goodbye kiss was not one you would give your mother. But was this more on Marjorie than it was on...
Right, yeah. She's really the one in power here.
Bernie, in talking to Joe after the fact, said he knew the rumors. And he even understood why people might assume their relationship was something more than friendly. But he says there was nothing sexually about it. He viewed her as a mother figure and a friend. Because in their relationship, when he befriended her, she just kind of blossomed, he said. In the first few years. He knew that she was notoriously cranky, but she'd like to go to concerts, she'd like to travel, and I don't think she'd been able to do those things while her husband was alive.
Okay. Do we know at all if there was any abuse in her marriage?
I was not able to find
Okay.
anything about what.
Or was he just curmudgeonly and focused on work all the time,
Yeah.
and she kind of developed into the same mindset until someone who came along with shared interests?
I mean,
and
my guess, based on my professional experience, is that she's always had this personality. If her mother and her sister were afraid of her growing up, she's always been this way. But maybe her husband had a similar thing and was more dominating than her. But I don't know, because...
And if you have two of those kind of personalities that just, I mean, they got married when whatever, and they can't get along, one of them dies, and now the other one, oh, I'm going to start, quote unquote, living.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if your own mom is afraid of you,
it's not good news.
Not good. Dale would never be afraid of me.
Jail Dale. Shut out. So he said, we had a ball. I think I probably saw her happier than anyone in her family ever did, including her husband. She opened up to me and she became a different person. For a while.
So she's like doing a mask thing, like a spider luring in her prey with her fancy shiny dance, and then once you're there, I don't know anything about that.
I have no idea what that's like. But as time passed, he noticed she was becoming more possessive. She was resentful of him having other friends. She wanted him to be available anytime she needed him, 24 hours a day. She'd page him at work 3 to 4 times an hour, demand that he run errands for her. He would go to her house in the morning and make her coffee, and then go have lunch with her every afternoon. And this is before he quit the funeral home.
Yeah.
So this is what led to him quitting the funeral home, is this possessive behavior.
Okay, yeah, and it wasn't like he became, she gave him a stipend or something, and maybe she did to supplement his income, but like you cannot be a funeral director. You're on call as a funeral director.
Yeah.
You can't be on call for another entity when you're already on call as a funeral.
I'm on call for the dead people. I can't be on call for the live one.
It's a 24/7 job.
Yeah. So, but he was also helping her with self-care, grooming, laundry, picking out her clothes. Eventually, he became her business manager, had access to all her money, and was paying all her bills. He did admit the money was a lure, but he also said, I was afraid to leave her. She could be very vindictive. I've seen that.
And in a small town, you can't escape someone.
She was just so controlling. She felt like she could own me, and I guess to some degree she did. It was like the feeling I've read in some books about spousal abuse. That type of thing where the woman keeps going back to her husband even though she knows she shouldn't. I felt like that sometimes. When reflecting on her death of his aunt, Joe said, Bernie's not the first one who thought about killing her. He's just the first one who went through with it.
Yeah, that's very telling about... Kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you remember Leona Helmsley. She was the hotel magnate heiress, whatever you want to call her. And she was, like, considered one of the worst people in the world.
Yeah.
And when she died, like, people rejoiced.
So, when this new lawyer got a hold of Bertie's case with this new information, they got a new psych eval. Because the first guy didn't know about the sexual abuse and all the other things, which is important information to someone's biopsychosocial assessment. Like, you need to know those things about what's driving the behavior.
Right.
So they were proposing that he had a dissociative episode sparked by the cumulative effect of his childhood abuse and the demeaning treatment of Marjorie. He described this to the court as Bernie being like a battered wife who snapped due to Marjorie's abuse. Part of the constitutional error the lawsuit claims was that Bernie was blackmailed by law enforcement, threatening to release tapes they collected about his sexual encounters with local men in the community. And they forced him to sign a statement indicating premeditation.
Oh, okay.
And that is how he got his first guilty verdict.
Yeah. Okay, so he was essentially coerced into a statement regarding premeditation that likely didn't occur because he was a gay man in a small Texas town.
Yep. And so, someone else is important to know, and this is going to come more in part 2, is we have the names of these people. This is Danny Buck Davidson, who was
Prosecutor?
the prosecutor.
Okay, he looks like a prosecutor.
Mm-hmm. We're going to give him that magnet because that seems fitting. So, during the whole case, Danny Buck Davidson was like, he's a murderer, blah, blah, blah. But we're going to find out in part 2 that after the fact is like, had I known this, I would have proceeded very differently.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, now you have my... I'm piqued because for a prosecutor to suddenly turn 180 on...
Well, and you have to think, so... I don't even know. I'll update the board before I take the picture. But so, we're starting in 1990. The murder happens in 1999. We're in 2012. Mm-hmm. Where this happens. And so, we're further along. We're past 2012. We're almost to 2014, which is a key thing that happens when all this information is coming out. But the key thing about a good prosecutor is my opinion changes based on the information I have.
Oh, yeah, that's, like, good on him for, receiving new evidence and information, looking back and reflecting. Like, anyone as a person should do that. Anytime your worldview is changed, you should be willing to update your opinions.
Yep. And so, like, the key things that are important is right now they're saying, was he in a dissociative state? Mm-hmm. And so the first psychiatrist, and so this is what I pulled from the court paperwork. I read all 172 pages, so you don't have to. Is it cites that Dr. Mears, who I also have a picture of, hold on.
Also, every time you hear that scraping against the microphone, it's Nicole's boobs when she gets up out of her chair.
You're getting motorboated. So we have Dr. Mears.
Okay, he looks like a psychiatrist.
We're gonna... Okay. It's pixelated, but so we have Dr. Mears. And he did the best he could with the information he had. But it says that when we look... So it says that Dr. Mears... So this is what they posted. So they were trying to get him out, stating that there was a problem. And it's called a post-conviction writ of habeas corpus. That's what they were using to try to get him out.
Okay.
And it's a post-conviction writ of habeas corpus is a legal action that allows a person, after being convicted and sentenced, to challenge the legality or constitutionality of their conviction and sentence. It says that the imprisonment is unlawful based on something that happened. The police tricked him into writing this, saying, it's 1999. If you don't say that this is premeditated, we're going to release your sex tapes.
Yeah, and you cannot do that.
Yes. So, and now they have the information about the sexual abuse, which there's more to that in episode 2 because there's proof. But it says that Dr. Mears' assessment stating that a dissociative disorder is a situation in which a person can really more or less become somewhat different than what they normally were. It is an identified disorder and is listed in the American Psychiatric Association's DSM-4. Just so everyone knows, we're in a DSM-5 TR, so we're in like the second edit of the DSM-5, so like we're well past this. Did you just spill wine on your rug?
It's old carpet. It blends right in. It was 2 drips.
I want you to know we just ordered white chairs for the podcast room.
Yeah, this may be our last time drinking red wine
in the podcast room, because we have a pretty new table, and I don't want her to ruin the pretty new chairs because one of us is decorating the podcast room.
It's not me.
Also, if you go to our Facebook page, I would like your votes on which pictures I should get. I have 2 real bangers to choose from. They're gonna go up against the wolf picture and the tiger picture we have in the corner that are her husbands.
Yeah. And to complement this table that we have came out of Nicole's shed this afternoon. We dusted dead spiders and cobwebs off of it.
It is a beautiful table,
It's a
though.
nice table, and the bottom of it is
an antique sewing
it's
machine.
an antique pedal-powered sewing machine. There's no sewing machine on top, but I do like that the wrought iron sides. It says domestic, which neither of us are.
I mean, we make sourdough bread.
We make sourdough. David said I wouldn't be a very good housewife, and I was like, well, why don't you just let me find out?
Well, I mean, you're a better housewife than he is.
I'm a better...
Everything. We can say that because he never listens to the podcast.
I was going to say I'm a better husband. Because I mow the lawn and fix the fence.
If I need someone to fix something in my house, I'm calling Kyla, not David.
Okay. Let's continue.
Okay, so, but the whole thing is, it's not a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde situation. It's not like someone flips and then they're a different person. Mm-hmm. It's like lights on, nobody home, and the person who's normally in charge of driving the bus is no longer encoding memories.
Okay.
And so when you look at someone who is living in a domestically abusive environment, like, what's your understanding of how that's going to impact them?
Well, if you're, a victim of domestic abuse, your entire life is controlled. You have nothing of your own. Just put the pepper on the side table.
I don't want to put it on the unsealed wood table.
Every aspect of your life, nothing is your own. You don't have anything that belongs to you. Yep, pour that right by the microphone. Also, we can add 15 minutes to our timer here.
Okay.
I set it for 45. So.
Okay, I was looking. I was like, oh God, we got 4 minutes left. We're very professional, guys.
More like 18 minutes left.
I'm long-winded, guys.
And I'm not going to prattle on more about being, domestic abuse situations.
Well, I mean, Kyla has a lot of background in domestic abuse.
No, I don't. Not one of my areas of expertise. If you want to ask me more about how long a body can lay in a freezer, I'll talk about that.
But good news, I am well versed in domestic violence. I've been doing this shit for 20 years.
You've been domestically violent for 20 years.
No. There is no legal evidence to support that, Kyla.
The handful of rocks you threw at the side of my head last night.
We were playing a game, and she moved. I was going to hit her shoulder. Mm-hmm. She had it coming.
Mm-hmm. That's what they all say.
But when we look at domestically violence, and it could be, because people always think domestic violence is, oh, he hit me. Mm-hmm. But it's a wide range. It could be physical abuse, it's sexual violence, it's psychological aggression, which is emotional abuse, and it can even be stalking. Like, it could be, we don't even have contact until I'm following you everywhere you go. So when someone is living in that cycle of abuse, they can respond in a variety of ways. They're often responding very vehemently to the perpetrator's mood. So I have to be hyper vigilant about what the person abusing me is thinking and feeling, because I have to anticipate their needs, because my needs are dependent on their needs getting met.
Yeah, so it's like, when my abusive husband comes home, I know he wants a beer and a burger for dinner on Tuesday.
And I had better fucking have that. When I hear that car door slam, that burger had better be in the grill, in the skittle. And then skillet.
I know you were trying to say griddle and skillet.
I talk like I spell.
Excellent. The burger better be in the skillet, goddammit.
This is why I do not fix the spelling errors in the website, because I want you to find them.
Oh, that was crime.
And trust me, there are plenty. But so no, you have to be attuned to what their needs are. And so if Bernie quit his job because she's calling him 4 times an hour and needing him to be there all the time, and now his only line is to be with her, I have to be attuned to her wants and needs. Mm-hmm. And so, like, some of the things that can happen, and these are important later on also, is you can have health problems, medical issues. You can have heart or gastrointestinal issues. You can have chronic pain.
Well, it's like what we talked about last week with mass psychogenic illness or mass hysteria.
Yeah, like
it's like your body's in a fight or flight
yes.
constantly.
Well, because you are. Like, your adrenal glands are just wore out because you're always in fight or flight because you're waiting to see when is the boom going to drop. And you can have major depressive disorder, anxiety, PTSD. A lot of people have substance abuse disorders as a way to cope with this. And over time, people struggle with their own emotional regulation because I'm so busy trying to help you regulate your emotions that I have to disregard my own. I disassociate, I numb, and I have trouble reading social cues. Because the only cues that are important to me are yours, my abuser.
Yeah, I don't matter. I'm not a person anymore.
I'm not a person.
My entire life is devoted to making sure your needs are
I'm an
met.
extension of you. So it leads to feelings of helplessness. Like, we've all heard of learned helplessness. I can't get out of it unless I shoot someone 4 times in the back. And so that is where I'm going to stop. Because do you think that's where the case ends, knowing there's a part 2?
Because I know there's a part 2.
So I want you all to think about where Bernie is. So they're trying to get him a new case. They're recognizing that his first trial had some problems. The police tricked him into admitting to something that he may or may not have done.
Yeah, I think trick is even too generous a word.
They blackmailed him into it.
They threatened him.
And so the next episode is going to be what happened with the second trial.
Okay.
And it gets more and more interesting as we go.
All right. Okay.
Do you got any fun facts?
Let's see. I'll throw you a funeral fun fact. So one of the things I used to hear a lot as a funeral director was, well, first of all, everyone mispronounced the word hearse. There's no T in hearse. It's just hearse. It's not Hearst.
It's like Patty Hearst, they call it?
It's not Patty Hearst. It's just Hearst. And the other thing is, you might have heard this when you were a kid growing up, and your hair and your nails continue to grow after you're dead. That's absolutely not
It's
true.
Dehydration.
Yeah, it's dehydration. As the
you're
water,
mummifying.
Yeah, as the water leaves your scalp and your fingertips, and really you don't even really see this, but it looks like your nails might be very slightly longer. Nothing grows. Once you're dead, every process stops. There
are no cells reproducing.
There are no cells reproducing. The only thing reproducing is the bacteria that lives in your gut that's going to decompose you. So,
and that's why you bloat.
And that's why you bloat. Yeah.
But what if they're vampires, Kyla?
Vampires don't die, so they don't bloat.
And that's where we're going to leave it. And I'm going to leave her sitting in a room alone with me.